Hey, what's good, guys? Today we're going to be talking about a very famous former vegan activist known as Alex O'Connor. Now, if you've been watching this channel for a while, there's a good chance you might have seen a video where I covered Vegan Teacher talking about Alex O'Connor, and now he was a piece of shit, and she hoped that he turned into a non-vegan wallet.
Alex O'Connor, you're a piece of shit. I hope you yourself turn into a non-vegan wallet. Love you.
And that's because he gave up veganism roughly 2 years ago, 2 to 3 years ago, something like that. After 3 years of being a hardcore vegan activist, one of the most passionate and possibly more aggressive that I've seen. Now, he was kind of like Earthling Ed in a way, where he was a little bit more calm, but you can also feel and sense the emotion when he talked so passionately about the topic, and he had this resentment towards non-vegans that most vegan activists have as well. He was no different. Now, at some point, he started selling some non-vegan wallets, right? That's why that Vegan Teacher said that, and that was a fairly recent thing. That's why she blew up on him. Now, it's very interesting to see someone go from being such a passionate vegan activist, do not commodify animals, using animals for any purpose is unnecessary, unneeded, unethical, should never be done, to then selling animal skin as a product for themselves. It's quite an incredible switch.
If you think that it's, I don't know, wrong for any person under any circumstance to so much as hit a dog that they're looking after, and yet simultaneously justify literally gassing pigs to death in a chamber of carbon dioxide so that you can eat a sandwich that you won't remember eating, you're suffering from CD. In all my 4 years or so of professionally tackling religious fanatics in the public sphere, I have genuinely never encountered more dogma, more ignorance, more evil, and indeed more cognitive dissonance than I have coming from people who, despite knowing the unimaginable horrors necessary to produce it, just can't give up cheese or just can't give up bacon. Well, if that's you, someone who sees veganism as some kind of fringe woke phenomenon or as just a funny and mockable philosophical position to be treated as nothing more than a laughingstock for when you get bored, it's time to snap out of it. Okay, we can either have a grown-up conversation about this or not. But if you're unwilling, forgive me for not taking you ethically seriously. Okay, you can giggle all you like about bacon, though, as if it's still 2009.
And we're here to talk about why this switch happened. And believe it or not, it comes back to health issues. Now, Alex O'Connor explained in his video after his community post from announcing that he was quitting veganism, he explained that he had irritable bowel syndrome, which was not caused by veganism. It was just a pre-existing health issue that he suffered with. And due to that irritable bowel syndrome, he had a hard time staying on a plant-based diet. Even eating a non-plant-based diet was a challenge as well, but the plant-based diet made things just infinitely worse. And there's a lot of times where he was missing out on really important nutrients because he wasn't eating. He was effectively starving himself a lot of the time, because I'll let him explain in detail why he did that. But the purpose of this video is to discuss Alex's rejection of veganism, mostly from the health perspective, health point of view, nutrition, all of that stuff, as well as some related or closely related diseases that also impact a person's practical ability to be vegan.
So as you can imagine, the past couple of weeks have not been particularly easy for me, but of course this is something that I expected. When I made my community post announcement about consuming animal products, I expected that there would be a great deal of sadness and disappointment and hatred and anger and all of these kinds of things. But crucially, and I should say this from the outset, even though it should be obvious, look, I'm not some kind of nutritionist. I'm certainly not a nutritional expert. And so I'm in a bit of an awkward situation here in that, you know, I feel I want to explain some of the problems that I was facing in maintaining a healthy plant-based diet. But I want to clarify that shouldn't be informing your position on the viability of a plant-based diet for yourself. A lot of people have been sending me studies, in particular the American Dietetic Association study that being vegan is healthy at all stages of life, including pregnancy, as if this is new information to me. Yeah, as if this isn't something that I was already aware of and wasn't citing myself.
I feel it's important to chime in here because this is the first time that nutrition and health has been directly mentioned, right, in association with veganism. So he references the paper written by the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, which is the one that vast majority of vegan activists and people in the vegan community often cited to non-vegans to say, nope, look here, they said that everybody can be vegan, it's healthy for everybody at all stages of life. There's two things that weren't properly understood here. First off, even in the first paper, they said very specifically can be if properly planned. But what people aren't realizing is that they also explain further into the paper, if you actually read the details of it, which I'm sure the vast majority of them didn't, or they just ignored this bit. They specified by a nutritionist. If your diet is planned out by a nutritionist, you have a nutritionist in your corner backing you every step of the way, then a vegan diet can be healthy for all stages of life, is what they said. Again, emphasis on can, and then they revised this paper to actually remove the all stages of life, excluding pregnancy, excluding childhood, etc. But what's interesting is there are a good amount of vegans that will still reference this paper, the old one, as if it's still true, when the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics learned to walk that back. And they also never mention that when they say appropriately planned, they literally mean by a nutritionist. Actually, what I failed to emphasize is that the paper itself is actually about addressing nutritionists and them advising their clients on vegan and vegetarian diets. It's not a paper written to individuals, it's a paper for nutritionists. And they express multiple times throughout that these are effectively guidelines for nutritionists when dealing with patients that want to be vegan or vegetarian. I'll just read you guys a line from this paper so you know what I'm talking about. So this line right here: adults follow vegetarian and vegan dietary patterns for various reasons. The aim of this paper is to inform healthcare practitioners, including RDNs and NDTRs, about the evidence-based benefits and potential concerns of following vegetarian and vegan dietary patterns for different populations of non-pregnant, non-lactating adults. This position paper is supported by current evidence, including several systematic reviews. So yes, the purpose of this paper is to literally advise nutritionists effectively with health and nutrition facts about vegan and vegetarian diets to aid their potential vegan or vegetarian clients. And they emphasize adults specifically many times throughout this paper. Now I want you guys to pay attention to this as well. So this is from this exact same paper, and it actually talks about what the potential benefits are and what the potential risks or harm can be from adapting a vegan diet. Now this is the likely benefits. So adults with high risk of cardiovascular disease, total cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, BMI is a likely benefit. Awesome, great, cool. Adults with type 2 diabetes, so basically a lower A1C, which is just your overall like blood sugar levels for a certain time period, and BMI again. And then a possible benefit, which means could happen, could not happen, who knows. Lower blood pressure, lower LDL cholesterol, lower triglycerides, C-reactive protein, BMI again, blood glucose, which we've already seen, and then diabetes and medication dosage. Again, these are all effectively very closely related, almost all the same thing. Now the maybe no difference category: cardiovascular disease incidence, coronary heart disease, stroke incidence, and then all the same things we just saw before could also be no different, is basically what this is all saying here. It may not benefit you in any way, shape, or form according to this. Now if you look at the potential harm, you're looking at fracture risk, bone mineral density, vitamin B12 concentrations, vitamin D concentrations, HDL cholesterol, triglycerides. Quality of life, uncertain evidence is interesting, this category. But yeah, quality of life is something you probably want to be concerned about on a vegan diet, and we'll go into great detail on that in a different video. Maybe a little bit here too. So now you guys are familiar with this paper and pretty much what's in it. We'll continue with Alex's video.
Of course, the American Dietetic Association says that a well-planned vegan diet is healthful at all stages of life. The key point is well planned there, and my problem is not with the idea that every nutrient that's required to be healthy can be found in a plant-based diet. I think that it can. But for instance, one of the most important or relevant here is IBS, or irritable bowel syndrome, which people have to varying degrees. I've suffered with it quite severely for most of my life. It's not been as bad as I've been getting older, but it essentially translates to having some severe stomach problems, as well as I don't really know how to put it, but you need to make sure you have access to a toilet. For most of my childhood, one of the great miseries of my life was that I essentially wouldn't be able to go anywhere that didn't have an immediate toilet access, because otherwise I'd be absolutely stuck out. And the anxiety of just being there and knowing that that was the case would be enough to bring on the symptoms of IBS. And I'd just be paralyzed by it. This was livable. That is an important thing to stress. It's not like the pain that I experience when I suffer from these symptoms is completely and utterly debilitating. As I say, as long as I'm in a situation where I can deal with it, as long as I have a toilet nearby, as long as I don't need to be doing something important. But the problem is that, of course, when there was something I needed to be doing, so if I was giving a talk or a debate, or even if I was attending a lecture or a debate or something like that, or indeed if I was just hanging out with friends in a place that didn't have a toilet access, if we were just going for a picnic or like hanging out by the river or something, I knew that if I was going to eat something and then go to these things, there was a good chance that I was going to run into quite a bit of trouble. And so what I would do is have a very restricted relationship to food in these instances. It meant essentially not eating or eating very minimally and safely whenever I was in one of these circumstances. So sometimes, we'd be out and people would be getting food and people would notice that I'm not really eating anything or not finishing a meal that was in front of me, or being really picky with my food, and a lot of the time I'd have to politely decline.
So he has irritable bowel syndrome, which is a chronic gastrointestinal disorder that affects the large intestine, causing symptoms like abdominal pain, cramping, bloating, and changes in bowel movements like diarrhea, constipation, or both. So due to this, Alex found it impractical to maintain a vegan diet, because the truth is plant-based foods are going to cause more flare-ups if you have a disease like irritable bowel syndrome than eating animal-based foods. So effectively, to counter this, before making the switch, he starved himself. Whenever he needed to do an event or needed to be somewhere where toilet access may be limited, he had to starve himself because he didn't want to be shitting his britches in the middle of a debate or middle of a talk or middle of hanging out with his friends, because it was something that he could not control, especially like the diarrhea, but the abdominal pain, all the other types of discomfort. This sort of thing was definitely mediated when he reintroduced animal products, and he knew that probably because he talked to a doctor about it and they probably recommended it to him, and instead of ignoring his doctor like a lot of vegans do, like on the vegan subreddit for instance, he listened and he learned, and he realized very quickly, wow, plant-based diet may not be practical for everyone, including myself. And that made him walk back his entire position on the ethics of consuming meat, going from the tune of, oh, it's completely unnecessary under all circumstances, shouldn't be done, it's evil, it's horrible, it's terrible, it's awful, completely needs to be destroyed from our society, needs to be omitted entirely, to completely changing that tune to like, oh, I think it's necessary, we should just do it better, which is so bizarre to me because that's exactly how the vegans should be treating animal agriculture in the first place. This is the exact logic that actually makes sense. It's the fact that they refuse to acknowledge that animal agriculture is a necessity for humanity. And I've already explained in great detail many times. You guys can go and watch, some of my older videos where I say older, but I'm talking like a week or two. Like I made these videos very recently, but some of my other videos where I do explain, sprinkle these thoughts throughout on why it is necessary for humans to consume meat, to consume animal products. And it's very abundantly clear and obvious, but again, these vegans are wearing some type of polarized sunglasses where they just cannot see this, for some reason cannot fathom it. Now, there are other diseases, and it's not just diseases that make consuming meat a necessity. There are also people who just don't convert nutrients from plant-based foods as easily as they do with others, and that's most people, but there are some that are significantly worse. Take vitamin A, for instance. Some people cannot convert the beta carotene from plants to vitamin A at all, so they end up not getting any of it, and they end up being severely deficient and can go blind, among a plethora of other issues. And that's just one of many. But there are also health conditions, real health conditions, that make it extremely difficult. I once talked about the ex-plant eaters, what I believe she goes by, who has ulcerative colitis, which is somewhat similar to IBS in a way. It also involves your intestines, and in the case of ulcerative colitis, it's inflammation of your, I don't remember if it's small or large intestines, but your intestines of some way, shape, or form. And that inflammation can make you feel very sick. It can make you shit blood. It can give you other types of digestive issues, vomiting. Like, you will not be taking in nutrients the way that you're supposed to if you have ulcerative colitis and you're stuffing yourself with nothing but plant foods. The vast majority of people that have that condition probably will not survive on a plant-based diet, not for very long, not for any meaningful amount of time. So naturally, as a vegan who actually cared about their own health and well-being, decided, I'm going to reintroduce animal products, and that reduced the flare-ups from her ulcerative colitis tenfold. She rarely has to deal with that issue anymore, and effectively saved her life. Now, there's a list of other issues that can impact a person's ability to be vegan, but we won't discuss it here. I mostly wanted to talk about Alex's reason for quitting veganism. Now, he also kind of summarizes it to, it was just easier to eat, animal-based foods, which I think is a kind of an odd way to put it, especially after being a staunch vegan. Like, easy shouldn't really matter, but it is the practicality of it. He had to effectively starve himself to be vegan, which is a great way to take on all the nutrient deficiencies you can, which could lead to a whole other world of health issues that I'm pretty sure Alex was not interested in exploring. So personally, I think given his position, he should do more to educate the vegan community and people in general about the necessity of consuming animal-based foods, because honestly, during his time as a vegan, he's done a lot of harm to the vegan mindset. I'm not going to blame him explicitly for how people think in the vegan community or anything about animal products being unnecessary or whatever, but he did play a huge role in that because he had a massive following. Earthling Ed could never. And a lot of people listened to him. They watched his video about the cognitive dissonance. There is a lot that he preached, and people followed and developed a mindset around non-vegans effectively being evil pieces of shit. And I think it's the responsibility of somebody who spread such deep moral, ethical, and nutrition-related misinformation to correct what they've done. Now, I think it's fortunate that the vegan community does remain very, very, very small. It doesn't seem to be growing too much more. But there are people that are literally putting their health and nutrition and all of that on the line for something that will never benefit them.